There is one word that explains everything about anxiety. In this 30-minute video, I'm going to show you the secret of tawakkul, trusting Allah in a way that can help you reach what seemed impossible, and the story of how through tawakkul, I reached in 1 year what I thought would take 5. But before any of that, let me describe something to you. It's almost 2 in the morning and you're still awake, not because anything happened today. Nothing happened today. That's the strange part. Your chest is slightly tight. You're running the same conversation for the 9th time, rehearsing a future that hasn't arrived, building an escape route for a problem that may never exist. And in the morning, you'll get up, you'll pray, you'll go to work, you'll answer everyone's messages, and not one person will know that you spent the entire night managing the universe by yourself. You can't even explain it to anyone, because on paper, your life is fine. That is the exact thing this word was sent to remove, not manage, remove. Now, I'm not going to define tawakkul yet, and I want to tell you why. Because there is a version of this word that quietly ruins people's lives. Same spelling, same translation in every dictionary, and most people who look it up walk away practicing the broken version, then spend years wondering why their trust keeps collapsing the moment real pressure arrives. If I hand you a clean definition in the first 2 minutes, you'll nod, you'll agree, and nothing in your life will change. I've watched that happen 1,000 times. So first, I want to say something to you. You are not weak. You are not failing at faith. You are simply carrying something that was never assigned to you, and you've carried it so long that the weight now feels like your personality. So before I show you what tawakkul is, I have to show you what anxiety actually is, because they are the same machine, running in opposite directions. Here's the thing nobody tells you about anxiety. Anxiety is not an emotion. Anxiety is a belief, a silent one. A belief so quiet you've never once said it out loud, and you would deny it if someone accused you of it. The belief is this: the outcome depends on me. That's it. That's the whole engine. And you can test it right now. Notice what you're anxious about, and notice what you're not. Nobody lies awake worried the sun won't rise. Nobody has a panic attack over whether their heart will beat while they sleep. Nobody is anxious about gravity. Why not? These are enormous life or death matters, and they don't cost you a second of sleep. Because somewhere deep in the wiring, you have completely accepted that those are not your department. That's the pattern. Look at it carefully. You are only anxious about the things you have quietly assigned to yourself. The moment the heart takes custody of an outcome, it starts guarding it. And a heart guarding an outcome cannot rest, because outcomes live in the future, and the future is a place your heart has no access to. So it does the only thing it can do. It simulates, over and over, every scenario, every branch, every disaster, all night long, trying to secure something it was never given the power to secure. That's not a mental health failure. That's a job description error. And this is where qadr, Allah's divine decree, stops being an abstract belief you memorized as a child and becomes the most practical thing you will ever understand. Because qadr draws a border. On one side, your effort, your intention, your choices, your work, fully yours, fully your responsibility. On the other side, the result, what lands, what opens, what arrives. That side was never yours, not once, not for a single day of your life. Everything you call anxiety is what happens when a human heart tries to stand on both sides of that line at the same time. And Allah told us where the heart actually settles. In Surah Ar-Ra'd, the statement is unambiguous. It is in the remembrance of Allah that hearts find rest, not in planning, not in control, not in having every variable secured. Read that as a diagnosis, not decoration, which raises the question that should be bothering you right now. If the cure is written that plainly, if it's right there, then why are there millions of people who pray, who fast, who believe every word of it, and who still live in permanent dread? Because most of us learned this word backwards, and the backwards version has a name, a real Arabic word, almost identical in sound, completely opposite in meaning, and it is the single reason your trust keeps collapsing. Let me show you 2 people. The first one has stopped moving. He has a decision in front of him that he's been avoiding for 8 months. He doesn't send the application. He doesn't have the conversation. He doesn't take the step. And every time someone asks, he has a beautiful answer ready. If it's meant for me, it'll come to me. He sounds like the most spiritually mature person in the room. he is actually the most frightened, because he has discovered that if you never act, you can never be rejected, and if you label the paralysis as trust in Allah, nobody is allowed to challenge you. Now the second person, she does everything. Every possible means, every backup plan, every contingency, executed perfectly. And then she lies awake at 2 in the morning auditing all of it, recalculating, checking whether she missed a variable. Ask her, and she'll tell you she's just being responsible. Two completely different people, opposite behaviors, the exact same illness. Both of them are still holding the outcome. One is holding it by refusing to move. The other is holding it by refusing to let go. Neither one has handed anything to anyone. And the first one, the one who calls his paralysis faith, he isn't practicing tawakkul at all. The scholars gave that a separate name centuries ago, tawakkul. One letter's difference in the ear, a completely different reality in the heart. Reliance means you act and entrust. Tawakkul means you abandon the action and call the abandonment faith. Ibn al-Qayyim, mapping out the stations of the heart, was explicit about this. Reliance without taking the means is not a higher station. It's a defect wearing the costume of a higher station. And the Prophet, peace be upon him, closed the door on this completely. He said that if you relied upon Allah as He truly deserves to be relied upon, you would be provided for like the birds are. They leave in the morning with empty stomachs and return in the evening full. Read the sentence again, slowly. The birds leave, they fly, they search, every single day. The hadith about trust is a hadith about flight. Allah did not describe birds sitting in the nest waiting for provision to be delivered. He described the provision arriving because of the going out, and He described the fullness arriving from Him alone. The flight is not optional. The flight is the point. And there was the man who came to the Prophet, peace be upon him, left his camel loose at the door, and said he had put his trust in Allah. He was told, tie your camel and then trust in Allah. Not tie it instead of trusting, not trust instead of tying. Both, in that order, forever. So hear this clearly, because you may have needed to hear it for years. You were never told to stop working. You were told to stop guaranteeing. The rope in your hand is worship. The knot you tie is obedience. What happens to the camel after that was never in your jurisdiction. But here's where this gets strange, because I've watched people fix exactly this. They start acting and trusting. They tie the camel, they say the words, they do it properly for months, and they feel nothing change. The tightness at 2 a.m. is still there, which means there's a third thing, something nobody mentioned in any lecture I ever sat through. It's the actual secret, and it flips this entire idea upside down. Here's why it didn't work. You were using tawakkul as a technique. Be honest with yourself for 10 seconds. When you said the words, when you said, I'm putting my trust in Allah, what was happening underneath? You had a specific outcome in mind. The job, the marriage, the health result, the visa, the door opening. And you said the words in order to get it. Trust went in one end, the thing you wanted came out the other. That's not reliance. That's negotiation. You brought Allah a plan you had already written, already signed, already committed to emotionally, and you asked Him to approve it, and you called your certainty that He would approve it trust. So when it didn't come, your faith shook. Of course it did. You never actually handed anything over. You just made a proposal with religious vocabulary attached. Now here's the flip. This is the part I need you to sit with, because everything else in this video rests on it. Tawakkul is not confidence that you will get what you want. Tawakkul is certainty that His choice is better than your want, before you know what His choice is. Read that again. Before you know, not after it works out, not in hindsight, 6 years later, when you can finally see why it was better. Anyone can trust after the fact. That's not trust, that's history. Tawakkul is the state of the heart while the answer is still unknown. And Allah worded the promise with a precision most people walk straight past. In Surat At-Talaq, whoever relies upon Allah, He is sufficient for him. Sufficient, not obedient, not compliant, not He will execute your plan. He is enough. He guarantees His sufficiency. He never once guaranteed your preferred version of events. And every ounce of your disappointment in this life has lived in the gap between those two things. Now look at the word itself, because the word gives it away. Tawakkul comes from wakil, and a wakil is not an assistant, not a helper you hire to carry out your instructions. A wakil is the one you entrust the entire affair to, someone you hand the file to completely because he knows more than you do, sees more than you do, and can act where you cannot. Ask yourself something. Do you supervise a wakil? Do you hand him the case and then call him every hour to check he's doing it your way? Do you lie awake at 2 a.m. reviewing his decisions? If you do, you never appointed him. You just hired an employee and gave him a fancy title. And now watch where this word appears in the Quran, because it does not appear in comfortable moments. Ibrahim, peace be upon him, standing before the fire, every option gone, nothing left to negotiate with. And what is reported from him at that moment is, Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakil. Allah is sufficient for us, and He is the best disposer of affairs. The companions, told that an army had gathered against them, warned to be afraid, and Allah records that it only increased them in faith, and they said the same words. Allah is sufficient for us, and the best disposer of affairs. Notice the timing, both times. Those words were not spoken after the rescue. They were spoken at the precise moment when every visible path had closed and no human being could see a way out. That's the location of tawakkul, not at the finish line, at the edge. So now connect it back. Anxiety is attachment to one specific version of the future. It's not caring about the outcome. Caring is normal. Caring is human. It's the heart declaring, this exact result, or I am not okay. Tawakkul doesn't remove your ambition. It removes the word exact. You still want the thing. You still work for the thing with everything you have. But underneath the wanting, there's a foundation that doesn't move. If it comes, it came from Him. If it doesn't, He is still sufficient, and He saw something I could not. And the moment that foundation is in place, the 2 a.m. simulations stop having a job to do. There's nothing left to guard. That's why trusting harder never worked for you. You weren't trusting Allah. You were trusting your plan and hoping He'd sign it. Once that flipped for me, something happened that I genuinely did not expect. My effort didn't decrease. It multiplied. I worked harder in that year than I ever had in my life, and it cost me less. And I need to show you why. Because the mechanism is not spiritual poetry. It's structural. There are 4 parts. And if even one of them is missing, the whole thing collapses. 4 parts. Watch which one is missing in your life, because I promise you, it's one specific one and you're going to feel it when I say it. Part 1. Knowing the one you're relying on. Here's something that will save you years. When your tawakkul is weak, your problem is almost never willpower. It's information. You cannot rely on someone you don't know. If a stranger tells you to jump and promises to catch you, your body will not move. Not because you're stubborn, but because your nervous system is doing math with missing data. So the question isn't, how do I trust more? The question is, who do I think He is? Because if He is Ar-Razzaq, the provider, the one who has never in the history of creation failed to deliver a single soul's provision, then your fear about next month is a factual error. If He is Al-Hakim, the All-Wise, whose every decision sits inside a wisdom you can only see fragments of, then a closed door is not a rejection. It's information you don't have clearance to read yet. If He is Al-Latif, the subtle, who arranges things so quietly and so gently that you often don't notice the rescue until years later, then the arrangement is already happening while you panic. Weak reliance is weak knowledge of Allah. Fix the knowledge and the reliance grows on its own. This is why the people with the strongest tawakkul were always the people who knew Him best. Part 2. Taking the means completely, as worship. Now, the part people skip. And I want to give you the most beautiful proof in the entire Quran. Maryam, peace be upon her, alone, in labor, in pain so severe that she wished she had died before this. No family, no help, no shelter. The single most physically helpless moment described in the book. And what is she commanded to do? Shake the trunk of the palm tree toward you. Think about what's happening here. Allah is about to send her ripe dates and fresh water. It is already decided. It is already prepared. Her provision is guaranteed by the Creator of the universe Himself, and He still tells her to pull the tree. A woman in that condition cannot bring down a date palm. Anyone who has seen one knows that. Her shaking is not what produces the fruit, and that is exactly the point. The means are not what produces the result. The means are what you owe. You pull the trunk because you were told to pull the trunk. The dates come from him. Your job is the rope, the application, the training, the phone call, the treatment, the work, done fully, done excellently, done as an act of worship. And dua belongs here too, not as a substitute for effort, but as the highest form of it. Asking is not what you do when you've run out of options. Asking is the most direct action available to a human being. Part 3. The handover. The scholars call it tafweed, delegation, the internal moment where you consciously transfer the outcome out of your hands. This is the sack hitting the ground. It is silent. It takes about 4 seconds. Nobody watching you can see it happen. And it is the difference between a person who works and sleeps and a person who works and stares at the ceiling. And here's what nobody warns you about. It is not a one-time event. You will hand it over tonight and find it back in your hands by Thursday. That's not failure. That's being human. You hand it over again and again. The repetition is the practice. Part 4. Contentment with what comes back. Rida. And this is the one that separates temporary calm from permanent stability. Because you can do the first 3 and still fall apart the second the answer isn't what you wanted. Rida is the state where the result arrives, any result, and your heart's response is, he chose. That's enough for me. Do not be discouraged if this one feels far away. This is the fruit, not the entry fee. It grows out of the first 3. You don't start here. Now, the part I actually need you to hear. The order matters. Do part 3 before part 2, and you get tawakkul, surrender without effort, the comfortable paralysis we talked about. Do part 2 without part 3, and you get burnout, effort with no release valve, exhaustion in the shape of responsibility. Do parts 2 and 3 without part 1, and the whole thing feels hollow, a ritual you perform on a being you haven't really met. So which one is missing for you? Be specific, right now. Is it that you don't actually know him? You know about him, but the relationship is thin? Is it that you've stopped taking the means and dressed it up as patience? Is it that you're doing everything and never releasing? Or is it that you release, but the moment the answer isn't yours, you fall apart? You already know the answer. It came to you before I finished the list. Nothing is wrong with your faith. One part of your structure is missing, and you've just identified it. I know these 4 work because I tested them under pressure during the worst year of my life, on a goal I had privately given myself 5 years to reach. Here's exactly what happened. I want to tell you this properly, including the parts that don't make me look good. 5 years. That was the number I had written down. I had a goal, and I had done the math the way anxious people do math. I counted everything I lacked, the time, the resources, the connections, the ability, and I concluded, reasonably, that 5 years was the earliest this could realistically happen. I didn't tell anyone the number, because saying it out loud would have made it real, and part of me was afraid that even 5 years was optimistic. Then things spiraled. I'm not going to give you every detail, because the details aren't the lesson, but within a short window, several things I had been quietly protecting fell apart at once. The plans I had built the 5 years on stopped existing, and I want to describe the feeling accurately, because I think you felt it. It wasn't sadness. It was a specific kind of exhaustion. The exhaustion of a person who has been holding something up for years and has just realized the weight was never keeping it standing. There was no dramatic turning point, no dream, no sign. I want to be honest about that, because those stories set people up for disappointment. What happened was smaller and far less cinematic. I made one decision. I would keep doing the work exactly as before, and I would stop auditing the outcome. That's it. Same effort, same hours. I just stopped running the simulations, and I discovered something that genuinely shocked me. I had assumed anxiety was the price of ambition, that the worrying was somehow part of the working, that the 2 a.m. rehearsals were a kind of preparation, and that if I stopped, I'd become complacent. That was completely wrong. Anxiety wasn't fueling my work, it was competing with it. It had been consuming the exact same resource my work needed: attention, energy, mental clarity, and it had been taking the larger share for years, right in front of me, while I called it responsibility. When I put the outcome down, that energy didn't disappear. It went into the work. So here's what actually happened. Month 2. Nothing spectacular, but it happened at a speed that had previously been impossible for me because I stopped redoing decisions I had already made. Month 5. This one surprised me because I had assumed it was a year 3 item. Month 9. And month 11. 11 months, not 5 years. Now here is the part I refuse to leave out. 2 of the doors I worked hardest on never opened. The pursuit that failed, the plan that went nowhere. I gave those 2 more effort than anything else on this list. I made dua for them specifically, by name, for months. They closed. And the door that actually changed everything was one I never planned for and did not see coming. It wasn't on the 5-year document at all. It couldn't have been. I didn't know it existed. Sit with that for a second, because it's the whole point. If my plan had been approved exactly as I wrote it, I would have gotten the 2 things that closed, and I would have missed the one that mattered. I did not accelerate anything. I want to be very clear about that, because I'm not selling you a technique. Allah decreed what He decreed, and He would have decreed it regardless of my mood. What changed is that I stopped spending half my life defending a future I could not control, and it turns out a heart that isn't carrying the future can carry an enormous amount of the present. It wasn't that I found more time. It was that anxiety had been stealing it in front of me the whole time. But I have to be careful here, because this next part is the part that made me delete my first draft of this video entirely. There's a question I owe you, and if I skip it, everything I've just said becomes a lie for anyone whose door stayed shut. Someone is watching this who has done everything I just described. You didn't get 11 months. You got 11 years. You made the dua. Not casually. You made it in the last third of the night, on your face, for years. You took the means. You tied every camel you owned. You handed it over so many times your hands ache from the handing, and the door is still closed. And somewhere in you, there's a thought you've never said out loud, because it feels like it would be ungrateful to say it. Maybe tawakkul works for other people. I need to speak directly to you now, and I need to do it carefully. First, let me dismantle something, because it's the thing that's hurting you. Tawakkul is not a payment method. It does not purchase outcomes. It is not currency you deposit and later withdraw. And anyone who teaches it that way, trust harder and the thing will come, is not teaching you Islam. They're teaching you a spiritual transaction with an Arabic word taped over it. That teaching breaks people. It creates believers who think their unanswered dua is a receipt for insufficient faith. It is not. The Prophet, peace be upon him, told us exactly what happens to a sincere dua. 3 possibilities, and not one of them is nothing. It is given to you in this life, or it is exchanged. The harm you are walking toward is turned away from you, and you never find out what you were saved from. You will never know. That's the design. The rescues you don't see are still rescues. Or it is stored, kept, held in full for the day when you will stand there and see the weight of everything you asked for waiting untouched, and you will wish, and this is narrated, that none of your du'as had been answered in the world. So the question was never whether your dua was answered. The question is which of the 3 it was, and you don't get to know that yet. Now hear qadr the way it was actually meant to be heard, not as a cage, but as mercy. The Prophet, peace be upon him, taught it as a settled reality. What passed you by was never going to reach you, and what reached you was never going to pass you by. Feel what that removes. It means the thing you lost was not stolen from you by your mistake, your delay, your one bad decision in 2019. It was never on the list. You have been prosecuting yourself for years over a verdict that was never yours to influence. And it means the thing you have, the people in your house tonight, the breath in your chest, was never at risk of missing you. Now let me take you to a shore. Musa, peace be upon him, with his people, the sea in front of them, Pharaoh's army behind them, close enough to see. No boats, no path, nothing. Every human calculation says this is finished, and his people say it out loud. We are caught. And his answer is recorded forever. Never. Indeed, my Lord is with me. He will guide me. Now understand when he said it. The sea had not moved, not an inch. There was no visible path, No crack in the water, no sign. He was standing in front of a wall of water, making an absolute statement about a rescue that had not started. That is tawakkul, not the parting, the sentence spoken before the parting. And here is what I want you to take from that. He didn't say, "My Lord will split the sea." He didn't specify the mechanism. He said, "He will guide me." He left the method entirely to Allah, and Allah chose something no human being on that shore could have requested, because no one there knew it was an option. Your rescue may not look like the thing you asked for. It may not look like anything you would recognize as rescue, and this is where sabr belongs. Because we translate sabr as patience, and that word is far too small. Patience sounds passive. Sabr is not passive. Sabr is what tawakkul looks like when the answer is delayed. It's the same trust, holding position, under time. It's the state of a person who has handed over the file and refuses to snatch it back just because the wait got long. And now the deepest thing I know about this subject. The goal of tawakkul was never the outcome. Read your own life backwards for a second. Who were you before this waiting started? What did your relationship with Allah look like when everything was easy? Some of you found Him in a hospital corridor. Some of you learned His names during a year you would not repeat for anything. Some of you have a closeness now that arrived through the exact door that closed on you. Some people receive the thing. Some people receive Him. And if you have to be told which of those two is the greater gift, then you're still reading the outcome and not the giver. Your dua was not ignored. It was answered in a currency you haven't learned to count yet, which brings me to the last thing, the practical part. Because everything I've said stays theory until you do one specific thing tonight. It takes about 90 seconds, and it's the thing that broke the cycle for me. 90 seconds, tonight, 4 steps. Step 1, name the outcome you're gripping, out loud, not a list. 1, the single thing your mind returns to at 2 a.m. Say it in plain words, I am gripping the result. Naming it does something. As long as it stays a fog, it feels infinite. Spoken, it becomes one specific thing, and one specific thing can be handed over. Step 2, name what's actually in your hands for tomorrow. The means, the concrete, boring, physical actions available to you in the next 24 hours. The call, the application, the appointment, the half hour of work. Say those out loud too. This step protects you from the paralysis we talked about, and it also does something else. It shows you how small your actual jurisdiction is. Usually 2 or 3 things. That's the whole territory. Everything outside it was never yours. Step 3, hand it over, verbally. Say the words the companions said when the army was gathering, and Ibrahim said in front of the fire, Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakil. Allah is sufficient for me, and He is the best disposer of affairs. Don't say it as a wish, say it as a statement of fact, because it is one. Step 4, stop revisiting it until you act again. When the thought returns, and it will, tonight, probably within the hour, you don't fight it. You don't argue with it. You return to step 2. Is there an action available to me right now? If yes, do it. If no, it's not mine tonight. That's the whole practice. And you will do it again tomorrow because it comes back. That's not failure. That's the training. Then in the morning, anchor it. When you leave your house, say what the Prophet, peace be upon him, taught us to say. In the name of Allah, I place my trust in Allah, and there is no power nor strength except through Allah. One of the most extraordinary promises is attached to that the person who says it is guided, sufficed, and protected. Say it at the door. It's a daily transfer of custody before the day has a chance to hand you back the weight. And here is the rule to carry for the rest of your life. Effort is my worship. Outcome is His decision. Contentment is my proof. One more thing, and I say it gently. If what you're carrying is medical, if this is beyond worry, if it's the kind of weight that doesn't lift with a night of good sleep, then please hear this clearly. Seeking treatment is taking the means. It is step 2. The Prophet, peace be upon him, told us that Allah did not send down a disease without sending down its cure. Going to find that cure is obedience. It is not weak faith. It is exactly what the birds do when they leave the nest. Now let me close the loop I opened at the beginning. At the start, I told you there was a version of this word that quietly ruins people. You've seen it now. the surrender that never acts, the effort that never releases, the trust that was really just a plan waiting for a signature. And I told you about the sack. Look at what's written on it. Control. It was never yours to lift. Not on your best day, not on your worst one. You picked up something that belonged to the one who holds the sky in place, and you've been carrying it for years, and you've been wondering why your back hurts. You can put it down tonight. You will still work. You will still plan. You will still want things badly and chase them with everything you have. You just won't carry what was never yours. So do this for me. In the comments, name the one outcome you're handing over tonight. Just the one. Not for me, because writing it down is step one, and something happens when you make it real. And if you want to go further, there's one more station of the heart that sits directly above this one, the one that makes tawakkul permanent instead of temporary. That's sabr, and it's the next video. It starts exactly where this one ends. Now go and pull the trunk of your palm tree, and let the dates come from him.